Watching the adventures of Ash and Pikachu was my first experience with Pokemon. Little did I know there was a whole other side to this new world in the form of video games. That was until my birthday of some young age, where I was gifted a Game Boy Advance and a copy of Pokemon Crystal version. I was captivated, and Pokemon would become a staple in my childhood from that point on. Now, I've casually played through just about every generation of Pokemon game with a single exception. Generation 1. For some reason, I never went back and played it. When I was younger, I didn't know that there were games that came before Crystal because I didn't know what generations were. And when I was older and figured out that Red, Blue, and Yellow were a thing, I already had the newer games to play, plus I had played Leaf Green and figured that I got the Kanto experience. But now, the time has come to experience the Kanto region in all its original 8-bit glory, for the very first time. So let's dive into this adventure where it all began. Just as with any Pokemon adventure, I wake up to find I'm 10 years old and go downstairs to say hi to my mom, who then tells me that all boys leave home someday and points me in the direction of the local professor who needs to tell me something important. But I only find his Gen Z grandson Gary, or is it Gen Alpha, it's kinda hard to keep up with the time periods, and he tells me Oak's not there. So I decide to brave the tall grass only to be stopped by the professor who rushes me back to his lab. I go ahead and pick my favorite Kanto starter, Squirtle, and Gary challenges me to a battle. The battle starts out rough with Squirtle missing its first move, but after some growls by Bulbasaur and another miss from Squirtle, we're able to beat Gary after both our Pokemon exchange tackles several times. After blaming his Pokemon for the loss, Gary walks off to go post some nonsense online. I go back home to double check with my mom that she's really alright with me traveling the region unsupervised, but she insists this is the natural step in a young boy's life. At least according to a video she saw on YouTube. So, with a potion in my pack and dreams in my heart, I set off down Route 1. I stop by a school in Viridian City which is teaching trainers about status conditions, but because this isn't my first Pokemon rodeo, I confidently stroll out of the classroom assuming status conditions work the same way in this generation as they do in all the newer ones. An assumption that would not age well. I then take a hard left out of Viridian City, forgetting that this is actually the way to the Pokemon League, until Gary stops me and tells me I don't got enough aura to take on the League, whatever that means, and challenges me to a battle. He now has 2 Pokemon and leads with a Pidgey that is higher leveled than my Squirtle and proceeds to hit with 3 sand attacks, lowering its accuracy to the point where it can barely land a hit with Bubble. Squirtle is only able to just take it out, but then Bulbasaur comes in and lands a Leech Seed and a couple tackles, while Squirtle, still covered in sand, can't land a single hit and faints. My second battle and I already lost. This may be a bit more of a challenge than I initially thought. After healing Squirtle, I venture into Viridian Forest. My plan was to raise up Squirtle and Sweet Brock, who I know is a Rock-type gym leader, but the trainers in the forest had other plans. During my first battle, a Weedle poisoned me, and immediately afterwards, I'm reminded of how poisoning works in the first few generations. A mechanic I blissfully forgot about after all these years, but it came flooding back to me when I heard that all too jarring of a sound. I rushed back to Viridian City, but Squirtle couldn't hold on and faints to the poison along the way. I guess the sight of my little guy fainting was too much to bear because I instantly blacked out when it happened. After being saved by a good Samaritan and brought to the Pokemon Center, I returned to Viridian Forest, only to be poisoned again in the very next battle and have to watch Squirtle meet the exact same fate a second time. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, I'm stopping at a Pokemart and buying an antidote. After way too much trouble, I emerge on the other side of Viridian Forest with far more caution for this region than I had going in, and with the realization that Gen 1 is an entirely different animal compared to the rest of the Pokemon games. At the Pewter City Gym, I'm able to beat the only other gym trainer there, but it wasn't exactly a cakewalk. It takes 2 bubbles to faint his Diglett, and then 3 bubbles to faint his Sandshrew, which was made even more difficult because of all the sand it continuously threw at Squirtle, which at this point I'm worried is taking a mental toll on my little turtle and might be causing him to develop an unhealthy fear of sand. But, after dusting Squirtle off and mustering up the courage to fight this fight together, we challenge Brock and it ends up being the easiest battle so far. Squirtle one-shots his Geodude with Bubble and 2-shots Onix, which missed Screech twice in a row. So, without losing any health and no sand in sight, we claim our first gym badge. Our next stop is Cerulean City, but first I level up and evolve Squirtle into Wartortle on Route 3 and catch a Spearow. Like the number of Pokemon in my party, my confidence is growing. So much so that I decide to head back to Route 22 to re-challenge Gary and get some revenge now that we're on an even playing field with our number of Pokemon. But he's nowhere to be found. A bit disappointed, I make my way to Mount Moon. My disappointment quickly turns to agitation as a non-stop barrage of Zubats swarm me upon entering the cave. I vividly remember hating caves in these games for the longest time solely because of this Pokemon. Like, I don't know what the rates at which Pokemon appear in different areas are, but I just know that Zubat's spawn rate is messed up, because they appear just about every other step. But there is a silver lining as my Pokemon leveled up a bunch, led by Spearow, who took a real fancy to knocking out every Zubat that crossed our path. We also added a new member to the team, Geodude, who was the only other Pokemon to appear in Mount Moon besides Zubat, and it only appeared like twice out of 100 battles. Couple that with the fact that I like rocks, and Geodude was a welcome addition to the team. Along the way, we are jumped by Team Rocket, the self-proclaimed Pokemon gangsters, who were sporting some surprisingly strong Pokemon, including one Grunt who had a level 16 Raticate, which toppled my already hurting team, resulting in me blacking out for the 4th time. I'm starting to wonder if it was really a good idea to go out on my own at 10 years old with this condition. But I'm not going to let my inability to stay conscious stop me from becoming a Pokemon master. So with my team healed, I made my way back through Mount Moon, defeating the remaining Team Rocket members, and even found a couple fossils. After defeating a super nerd, their words, not mine, I took the dome fossil for myself. The super nerd tells me I can't revive it until Cinnabar Island, which is kind of a bummer because I know that's not going to be for a while, and honestly, with the way things have been going, we might not even make it that far. But that aside, we stumble into Cerulean City and are met with Gary, who's lounging on a bridge scrolling through his phone. He challenges me to a battle after bragging about how strong and smart his Pokemon are. He leads with his newly evolved Pidgeotto and is met with my Spearow for a little flying-type showdown, and it was pretty clear who was the dominant bird. So I swap in for Geodude, who gets sand kicked in its face immediately, hits one tackle, and then proceeds to miss every single tackle afterwards until it faints. To this point in our journey, sand has been our greatest enemy. Not even my new sentient rock could stand up to it. Next comes out Wartortle, who takes a quick attack before using Water Gun to feint Pidgeotto. Gary throws out Abra, who just isn't having it and spends the whole time trying to teleport out of the fight to no avail. Next up is Rattata, and it takes 2 Water Guns to feint. Lastly comes out Bulbasaur, who I'd rather not face at full health with Wartortle, so my plan is to swap in Spearow, hopefully outspeed and get some good damage in with Peck, and then be able to finish it off with Wartortle. However, after landing 1 Peck for a lot of damage, I'm treated to a pleasant surprise in the form of Generation 1 moves working differently than I'm used to. Spearow is hit with Leech Seed, and it turns out that in this game, Leech Seed doesn't absorb health at the end of the turn it lands, but actually after the seeded Pokemon makes its next move, which allows Spearow to attack again and feint Bulbasaur, securing me a 2nd win against Gary. It doesn't really feel like I got my revenge for Route 22 because I was just hoping for an even playing field in terms of Pokemon we both had, but I'm happy to win a close one against my rival anyway. I then defeat 5 trainers on the bridge, and afterwards I'm met with a Team Rocket member, who gives me a nugget worth 5 grand in this world's currency. He then demands I join Team Rocket by putting on his best Godfather impression, but we aren't interested in joining the criminal underworld at the age of 10. Spearow is able to get some quality training in on our way to Bill's house and evolves into Fearow, and I'm given yet another lesson in the mechanics of Gen 1 moves, this time in a not-so-pleasant experience. While fighting an Ekans, Fearow is hit with Wrap, which then proceeds to do damage to me every turn. No surprise there, that's how Wrap works, but in addition to that, I guess in this game your Pokemon is completely immobile. Like, I went to attack multiple times and it just kept doing damage and not letting me attack. I panicked and sent out Wartortle to finish off the Ekans for the win, but I was left wondering, what just happened? Is there any way to escape Wrap once it's used, or is it a move that completely stops your Pokemon from attacking and damages it until it faints or switches out? I kinda remember hearing that some moves were broken in this generation, but that's pretty bad. Still reeling from that experience, we walk into Bill's house, only to be met with another shock. There's a talking Pokemon who claims to be Bill. He swears he isn't joshing me, which I love to see that wordage being used, and he asks me to help him turn him back into a human. We help him out, and as thanks, he gives us a ticket to board the SS Anne down in Vermilion City. Cool. Back in Cerulean, we challenge Misty. Firo defeats Staryu with a couple of pecks, and then proceeds to erase Misty's X-Defend by hitting Starmie with a Leer. I then go for 2 more Leers just to make sure I'll be able to get good damage on Starmie with my other Pokemon. Firo lands a peck to get some damage in before getting taken down by a Bubble Beam. Wartortle then comes in and uses a few tackles to feint Starmie and secure us the Cascade Badge. Before taking on the gym in Vermilion, I opt to do some training on the SS Anne and not let this ticket Bill gave me go to waste. Turns out I would have had to anyway because the captain of the ship has the HM cut, and one can't access the Vermilion gym without the move as it's blocked by a tree on one side and the ocean on the other 3 sides. Makes me wonder if the gym even wants challengers. As I barged into rooms on the SS Anne challenging anyone who would talk to me, I am made aware of a fun little detail in this generation that I actually didn't know as I leveled up Wartortle. It wanted to learn the move Bite, which I substituted for Tackle, thinking that a Dark-type move with stronger base power would be better. Come to find out, Bite is a normal-type move, not Dark. In fact, there is no Dark-typing or Steel-typing in Generation 1. This would be the first of 2 times I looked up anything about Generation 1 Pokemon on the old Google machine because I was so confused by Bite's typing. I tried to remain in the dark about this game by not looking up anything about Generation 1 mechanics or how Gen 1 differs from later games to make it more genuine to my first time playing it. I prefer going into a first playthrough not knowing much and just enjoying the experience for how it plays out. That being said, while looking into Bite's typing, I saw that Wartortle's learned move pool was very limited. In fact, after Bite, this line can only learn 3 more moves by level up. I checked into Geodude's and Firo's learned movesets while I was at it, and it was the exact same. But it did provide good insight for me to not evolve Geodude until it learned Earthquake at level 31. After this revelation, we continue our training spree until we round a corner and come face to face with Gary, who then starts a battle with us. We start this showdown in classic fashion. My Pokemon missing its attack after being blasted in the face with sand. But Geodude makes a quick recovery from the initial miss and lands a rock throw to one-shot Pidgeotto. I keep Geodude in to handle Raticate because it doesn't have anything to really hurt it with, and it gets the job done. Next comes out Kadabra, and I wonder what new moves it has after evolving from Abra, so I switch in Wartortle to deal with it, and it does so pretty easily with a couple of bites. Next up is Ivysaur, and I switch in Firo to one-shot it with a critical hit peck. Truly a team effort here on international waters as we take care of our rival in spectacular fashion. He tells me that no cap, I've been raising my Pokemon, which I'm pretty sure is a compliment. And he points out that Cut is up ahead, so that's surprisingly helpful from him. Upstairs, we meet a seasick captain who gives us the HM Cut after we cure his ailments with a couple good pats on the back. We then make our way east to do a little bit more training. And there we meet one of Professor Oak's assistants who says he has a new item finder for us if we've registered 30 Pokemon in the Pokedex. I have not, because at this point I've already decided that my dream is to train up a team of Pokemon and become the Pokemon League champion. So I lie to the assistant saying that I have caught 30 Pokemon, knowing full well that I have not. But the truth always comes to light, and I get called out instantly and don't get the item finder. You know, I hope the professor doesn't take it too hard. Next, we confront Lieutenant Surge, a military man who tells me he served in a war. Now, I don't know what kind of wars are fought in this world, but I thank him for his service, and we begin our battle. He leads with a Voltorb, who is able to dish out some surprisingly good damage with a couple sonic booms, but Geodude is able to take it out with Tackle. Next up is Pikachu, who I'm confident doesn't have nearly as powerful of a move as Voltorb, so I opt to keep Geodude in, which works out perfectly because Surge wastes a turn using an X speed, and Geodude one-shots Pikachu with Rock Throw. Last is Raichu, and I don't know what it's capable of, so I switch into Bellsprout to restore Geodude's health with a couple potions. Bellsprout falls to a Thunderbolt, and I feel like Geodude can take us home from here. With only electric-type moves, Raichu is a sitting duck who can only eat up damage until it faints, rewarding us with the Thunder Badge. Now, while looking at my Pokemon stats afterwards, I make another shocking discovery that eluded me until this point. There is no special defense stat in this generation. There's only health, attack, defense, speed, and a stat called Special. Now, for the second time, I turned to the interweb for clarification, and it turns out special attack and special defense are tied together into one stat called special. So basically, a Pokemon's special attack and special defense are identical. This, however, led to an entirely different revelation that actually changed how I played the rest of this game and made me question if I even really know anything about Pokemon games to begin with. Apparently, attack and special attack apply to type and not individual moves. And this isn't even exclusive to Gen 1. This is a mechanic that lasts through Gen 3 until what's called the physical special split occurs in Gen 4, which categorizes moves in the way that they are today and which I'm familiar with. I had no idea stats worked this way for so many generations, and it was like relearning how to battle effectively in Pokemon all over again. It's a simple mechanic, but it blew my mind. Like, I don't know how I've lived my whole life as a Pokemon fan without knowing this. Anywho, while mulling this all over in my mind, I pick up a bike using my bike voucher and cycle down Route 9, where I find that to get through Rock Tunnel we need the HM Flash. I'm not sure how I missed it because I tend to leave no stone unturned in these games, but then I remember there was that little cave in Vermilion that I never explored. So I backtrack and find myself in Diglett Cave. At the end of this accurately named cave, I emerge near Pewter City, and all the people around these parts are talking about the move Flash, so I know I'm in the right place. We once again cross paths with Professor Oak's assistant, who actually has the HM we're looking for, and was instructed to give it to us, as long as we registered 10 Pokemon in our Pokedex. I assume he lowered the bar after our last meeting. A few Pokemon short, we catch a Pidgey, Rattata, Diglett, and Jigglypuff to make for a clean 10 Pokedex entries and receive our HM. We then travel back to and through Rock Tunnel, where Fearow beats up some more Zubat, and we make it to Lavender Town. Now, I feel like Lavender Town gets a bad rep for being scary. Although it definitely is eerie, I kinda find it peaceful. Like, the journey's cruising along and everything is happening at such a quick pace, but in Lavender Town it's almost like time stands still. You have so many people reminiscing over lost friends and paying their respects to lives that have gone on. Even the music sounds slower and simpler. Almost like it's inviting you to stop, take a deep breath, and reflect. But what do I know? I'm only a 10-year-old kid. Me and my team take a tour of Pokemon Tower, where we find Gary, who is shocked to see us. Anyways, he leads with his Pidgeotto, who gets taken down swiftly by Geodude. Next, he sends out his new addition, Gyarados, and I switch in Fearow. Fearow uses Peck, and Gyarados answers with Bite. Then Fearow counters with Mirror Move and deals some great damage, finishing it off next turn with another Peck. He also has another new Pokemon, Growlithe, but it's much less threatening than Gyarados and gets one-shotted by Bubble Beam from Wartortle. Wartortle stays in to feint Kadabra with 2 bites, and finally Fearow comes back out to finish off the fight by feinting Ivysaur with a single peck. After our fight, my overconfident rival seems to be acting a bit out of character, and he even calls me pal a couple times. I can't put my finger on it, but he seems to be a little different. I'm not sure. Anyways, we look around the tower some more, but besides a bunch of channelers who are all wigging out, there isn't much going on. Mostly because we keep getting followed by mysterious ghost Pokemon who we can't even battle. So we make our way west towards Celadon, and along the way Geodude finally levels up enough to learn Earthquake, and at the same time evolve into Graveler. Once in Celadon, I discover a hidden room atop a building which has a Pokeball in it containing the Pokemon Eevee. And with that, our team grows to 4. Well, technically there are 6 Pokemon on the team, but I never use Jigglypuff or Bellsprout, and they're just there to use HMs and for moral support. I stock up on some items at the Celadon department store and stumble upon a man down on his luck who gives me a coin case saying that he won't be needing it anymore because he lost everything gambling and is now turning over a new leaf. Now, I'm not too sure if giving a 10-year-old access to the only item in the game needed to start gambling is the best moral decision, but I'm glad to help. I stop at the game corner and a couple of the patrons are more than happy to give me some coins to start playing the slots. Once again, I can't help but question the morality of these adults, but whatever, I have a gym leader to battle. Once at Erica's gym, I quickly tear through all the grass-type trainers with Fearow, and its newly learned Drill Peck. Once it's time to take on Erica, I lead with my tried-and-true bird who one-shots Victory Bell with its new move. I then decide to get Eevee some experience against her Tangela. Eevee is able to get off some tackles, including one for a critical hit, but then it gets hit with Bind, which apparently works the same as Rap, so I'm forced to switch out into Fearow to finish the spaghetti monster with a drill peck. Next in is Vileplume, which gets dropped with a single hit, and it's at this point that I start to think to myself that maybe my team's a little too strong. I've noticed that our victories are coming with less and less resistance, and my Pokemon's level in many cases is much higher than my opponent's. I've only been battling the trainers, but maybe Gen 1 just tapers off with the difficulty level as you progress, and this is just how it's going to be from here on out. A naive thought that surely won't come back to haunt me. Before we continue our journey, we stop back at the game corner to investigate some suspicious rumors we heard. Turns out the shady Team Rocket was operating underneath the casino the whole time. Who would have thunk it? We teach some Rocket Grunts a lesson and level up Eevee a bit when, once again, I accidentally discover something. So one of the Grunts uses Ekans, who Eevee brings down to half health with a quick attack, but it's then hit with a Rap. I must have been focused on something else at the moment, because I didn't know that Eevee was immobilized until I went to attack the next turn. Of course, Eevee can't move, so I plan to swap out next, but I misclicked and pressed an attack, and lo and behold, Eevee actually attacked. Which means that moves like Wrap and Bind only make a Pokemon immobile and do damage for a random number of turns, and then stop, and your Pokemon can attack again. After this fun discovery, we come face to face with the leader of Team Rocket. He introduces himself as Giovanni, and challenges us to a battle. He leads with an Onix, who my Eevee can't do anything against, so I switch into Graveler to show him who is the best rock monster in this region. Onix hits Graveler with a Bind, but with my newfound knowledge, I keep Graveler in to stall it out, and one-shot Onix with an Earthquake. Next out is Rhyhorn, who suffers a similar fate. Lastly is Kangaskhan, whose normal-type moves prove to be of little threat as Graveler buries it with a couple rock slides. Giovanni takes his leave, saying that he hopes we meet again, and leaves behind a Silph Scope. Before we head back to Lavender Town to put this new item to use, I decide it's time to buy a Thunderstone and evolve Eevee into Jolteon. Climbing back up the Pokemon Tower, we notice that all the ghosts that were following us before are actually Ghastly and Cubone, who were in some kind of disguise. But when we get to the staircase leading to the top of the tower, where we were blocked before, the Silph Scope reveals that the powerful ghost who is guarding it is none other than the restless spirit of a Cubone's mother, who lost her life while defending her baby from Team Rocket. With the help of a battle, Marowak returns to a peaceful state and enters into the afterlife. A nice little moment that convinces me that Team Rocket isn't just a band of thieves who are out to inconvenience people, but an evil group that we're going to help stop. My team's newfound conviction leads them to roll past the 3 Rocket Grunts upstairs, and we help out an old fellow named Mr. Fuji. He gives me a Poke-Flute for helping him out, and I know just what to do with this. Yes, in fact, it's time to do the one thing I've been waiting to do this whole journey. But first, I needed this flute. Everybody has a favorite Pokemon. I am no different. I've been biding my time this whole adventure, knowing that I couldn't catch my favorite Pokemon until a certain point in the game where I received a very specific item. Now was the time. But first I had to wake up Snorlax, who's another great Pokemon that I was actually able to catch pretty easily and thought about putting on the team, but I had tunnel vision. At last, in the distance, I saw what I was looking for, and I entered into its sapphire gates to receive the most important item on this journey. The Super Rod. With this treasure in my possession, I jumped onto my bike and made my way back to Celadon City as fast as my legs could cycle. Once there, I found a serene pond of crystal clear water and gave the Super Rod a cast. In mere moments, I had a bite, and as if written in the stars above, I reeled in my favorite Pokemon of all time. Poliwhirl. Wait, no, not you. Just throw the line back here, try one more time, and there it is. Slowpoke. Spanning all the way back to my very first Pokemon game, Slowpoke was always my favorite. I just love how lazy and easygoing this Pokemon is, and its design has always been one of my favorites. Now, with Slowpoke on the team, we make our way to Fuchsia City. I stop by the Safari Zone there and find the HM for Surf and a pair of gold teeth. So that's pretty cool, I guess. I soon found out that the man who had lost the teeth was actually the Warden, and upon returning his teeth, he gives me the HM for Strength. In high spirits, I mosey on over to Koga's gym, and the very first gym trainer throws out a hypno that is higher leveled than anyone on my team. I send Jolteon out, who faints to a psychic, and Firo has to come in to finish it off with a drill peck. That escalated quickly. Given my experience with the past gyms, I know that the gym leaders are always stronger than the gym trainers, so at this point I'm worried that my team won't stand a chance against Koga. Turns out I was worried about getting too far ahead of the difficulty curve for nothing, because the jump from Erika to Koga is no joke. Needing to train the team up a bit, we head down routes 15, 14, and 13, battling every trainer we could find, and there were a lot. Besides beefing up the team, nothing too exciting happened, except that Wartortle evolved into Blastoise. Oh, and I caught a Ditto. Not that I'm gonna use it for battle or anything, but it's a pretty neat Pokemon. Feeling like we're ready this time, we return to the Fuchsia City Gym, and Koga turns out to not really be that big of a problem thanks to Graveler, who was definitely the star of the show. He leads with a coughing against my Firo, and Firo feints him quickly with 2 drill pecks. Next out is Muck, and I switch in Graveler, who one-shots with an Earthquake. Out comes another coughing, but this one is taken out with a Rock Slide. Last is Wheezing, who isn't able to really damage Graveler too much with a Smog attack, and a Rock Slide was almost able to take it out. Seeing the writing on the wall, Wheezing decides to literally blow itself up, ending the battle and giving us the win, which was very nice of it. The Saffron City Gym is next, but we find that the Sylph Company building is under a Team Rocket attack. Tired of their antics, me and my team storm the building, beating down rocket grunts and scientists, but the building has 11 floors and teleporting pads all over the place, which made for a little confusion. I keep getting turned around and forgetting which floor I have and haven't been on, and after a while all the floors just started to blend together and look more or less the same. After spending an embarrassing amount of time aimlessly teleporting around and not making heads or tails of this maze, eventually I make it to a room where I'm met by Gary. Why he decided to wait for me up in a skyscraper that was in the middle of a Team Rocket takeover is beyond me, but I can only assume he was doing the right thing and fighting them as well. Either way, he leads with his newly evolved Pidgeot, who attempts to throw sand in the face of my Slowpoke, like some kind of initiation at this point, but misses and Slowpoke gets off a Psychic, which does very little, so I swap in Jolteon, who gets hit with a Quick Attack. Just lives it, and gets off a Thunderbolt to feint Pidgeot. Next, Gary sends in Gyarados, even though it has a super effective weakness to Jolteon, and of course Jolteon capitalizes, and one-shots with Thunderbolt. Next up is Growlithe vs Slowpoke. Slowpoke is able to take a takedown really well, and after a few water guns, secures the knockout. Alakazam is next for Gary, so I keep Slowpoke in, thinking it should be able to take any psychic moves really well, but Psybeam does a lot of damage, and Slowpoke only had 1 headbutt left, which was pretty effective, but after a cover from Alakazam and a water gun from Slowpoke doing virtually nothing, I swap in Blastoise to drop Alakazam with a critical hitting Surf. Firo then comes in to do what it does best in these rival fights and makes quick work of Gary's starter with flying-type moves. Gary leaves me with some encouraging words before our big fight with Giovanni and tells me that he's about ready to challenge the Elite Four. Although I have been able to beat him consecutively, Gary's got this confidence about him now that makes me think he really could make a run at the Elite Four. But we need to focus on the task at hand. It's time to confront the big bad boss and put a stop to Team Rocket once and for all. Giovanni leads with Nidorino, who Fury attacks Slowpoke but takes a devastating Psychic in return. After a Super Potion, Slowpoke goes for another Psychic to feint it. Next out is Kangaskhan, who gets feinted by 2 Drill Pecks from Firo. Slowpoke then comes back to drop Rhyhorn with 2 Water Guns, and finally Blastoise finishes the fight using Surf to wash away Nidoqueen. All in all, a bit of a lackluster fight for the boss of an evil organization, but maybe it was just that our power of friendship was too much to stand against. Afterwards, Slowpoke evolves into Slowbro, who, once again, I just love the design, and we finally make our way to Sabrina. She starts the battle with Kadabra, who tries to disable Jolteon's powerful Thunderbolt, but accidentally disables the far weaker Thunder Shock, a mistake it would pay for dearly the next turn. Next out is Mr. Mime, and a Thunderbolt critical hits and drops the Mime mid-performance. Jolteon then continues its tear of the Psychic Gym by landing another critical hit on Venomoth, And finally, it's Alakazam out for Sabrina to try and contain the unstoppable force that is my static puppy. It starts off strong with a critical hit of its own and puts Jolteon in a situation where one more Psybeam would faint it. But then it goes for a Reflect against my electric type for some reason, allowing Jolteon to go for one more Thunderbolt and finish its sweep of Sabrina, securing us the Marsh Badge. We then rest up at the Pokemon Center as we get ready to hit the high seas and make our way to our next gym challenge on Cinnabar Island. Once on the island, we find that the door to the gym is locked, so we decide to head over to the abandoned building that has definitely seen better days. While exploring, we find all sorts of books around filled with notes regarding the legendary Pokemon Mewtwo, who escaped from this place and destroyed it. Scary. Hopefully we never run into that Pokemon. I then remember there's supposed to be a not-destroyed lab on this island that can revive my fossil. So I quickly head over there and am greeted with a gentleman who tells me he can bring my extinct Pokemon Kabuto back to life from the fossil with his resurrection machine, and says it will only take a few minutes. I would have thought that something like resurrection would take more than a couple minutes, but again, I'm 10. What do I know about science? In the meantime, me and my team head over to the gym and find that it's unlocked now. After barely getting passing marks on his pop quiz, it was finally time to take on Blaine. He opens with Growlithe, who falls to a bubble, followed by a surf. Next, Graveler comes in to feint Ponyta with an earthquake. But not before Blaine used a super potion on it, even though it had full health and he just put it into battle. Which, I don't understand what he was going for there, but we take it. Third out for Blaine is Rapidash, but it gets the same treatment as its pre-evolution. Lastly, Arcanine takes the field and hits me with 2 roars, which do absolutely nothing, and we get the Volcano Badge. Only one more gym to go. We return to the lab, and my Dome Fossil has been revived into Kabuto, who I think will fit nicely on the team, so we take Surf down Route 19 and 20, leveling it up to get it on par with the rest of the crew. Along the way, we stumble upon the Seafoam Islands, a mysterious cavern in the middle of the waterway which has an air of mystery around it. We're exploring it when suddenly, it happens. We enter the deepest part of the cavern, and before us stands the legendary ice bird Articuno. I wasn't exactly prepared to take on a legendary Pokemon at this point, but it's a legendary, so of course I gotta try and catch it. I go with Jolteon, who lands a Thunder Wave, and I call out for a Thunderbolt because I assume Articuno, being higher leveled and having legendary stats and all, should be able to take it well. But Jolteon unleashes an electrifying critical hit that drops Articuno like a sack of bricks. Although I'm disappointed that I missed the opportunity to catch a legendary Pokemon, the journey must continue. We march into Viridian City with our eyes set on the last gym badge. The mysterious gym that was once closed is now reopened with the return of its gym leader, so we step inside and are met with a bunch of ground-type gym trainers. Kabuto is able to make quick work of them, and in doing so evolves into Kabutops. Tucked away into the furthest corner of the gym, we discover that the gym leader is none other than the leader of Team Rocket himself, Giovanni. He says he's planning to bring back Team Rocket, but we aren't about to let that happen, so we challenge him to a gym battle. He leads with Rhyhorn, which is no match for Kabutops, who one-shots with Surf. Next out is Dugtrio, who outspeeds Kabutops, so I switch in Slowbro to hit with some Bubble Beams to hopefully slow it down. But it turns out that wasn't necessary because Slowbro critical hit for a knockout instead. Next out is Nidoqueen, who is able to poison me with a Poison Sting, but a combination of Psychic and Bubble Beam is enough to finish it off. Nidoking takes the field this time, but stands no chance against yet another critical hit, this time courtesy of Psychic, and Slowbro just is firing on all cylinders for this last gym. Last out for Giovanni is Rhydon, but a single Bubble Beam is all it takes to secure us our last victory and the Earth Badge. Giovanni congratulates us on our victory and then disbands Team Rocket, saying that he's now going to spend the rest of his life studying Pokemon and hopes we meet again. Always good to see a villain turn from their wicked ways and try to be a force for good. Now with Team Rocket defeated for real this time and all 8 gym badges in my pocket, we make our way towards the final challenge. But while strolling down Route 22, we meet Gary, in the exact same spot we lost to him back in the beginning of our adventure. The same spot I went back to after the first gym, only to find that Gary was long gone. I really didn't expect this rival fight, but it's the one I've been waiting for my entire journey. With a full team on both sides, we begin our showdown. He leads with his classic Pidgeot, and I start with Kabutops. It's able to chip away at Pidgeot's health with Surf and Body Slam while it just keeps going for agility. Next, Gary chooses to go with Rhyhorn, but Kabutops shows him that was a mistake by taking out Rhyhorn with Surf. Then comes in Gyarados, who is a much bigger problem. It's able to land 2 Hydro Pumps, which fades Kabutops, but not before it gets some good damage in. Jolteon is then able to come in and clean up with a super effective Thunderbolt. I keep Jolteon into battle against Growlithe, who is able to survive on just a sliver of health and get an Ember off, but it really doesn't do much, so Jolteon finishes it off next turn. Alakazam is up next, and I counter with my Psychic type. Slowbro gets some good damage off with Headbutt, but then Alakazam sets up a barrier and uses Recover to put itself in a good position. I try to use Bubble Beam to slow Alakazam down, but it doesn't really work. Alakazam uses Psybeam, which hits hard and confuses Slowbro. His second Psybeam then critical hits for a lot of damage. Slowbro hits itself in confusion and then gets blasted by another critical hitting Psybeam, which feints it. Blastoise is up next and is unable to feint Alakazam with a Surf, and it recovers and goes for another Psychic. Blastoise gets a little more damage in with Surf before getting feinted to Psybeam. I send in Fearow to outspeed and land a Drill Peck, which actually critical hits to finally finish off Alakazam. Last but not least is Venusaur, who I'm sure would rather be facing anyone else on my team, but instead is met with 2 Drill Pecks to the face, which cements my victory and avenges my only rival loss. And this one felt good. I beat Gary all those other times after the initial loss, but I never really felt like I made up for this one. Now with this battle under our belts, we're ready to take on Victory Road. A cave system filled with powerful Pokemon and trainers that serves as the only way to access the Pokemon League. While finding our way through, we once again stumble upon a legendary Pokemon, this time the legendary Firebird Moltres. This time I'm set on capturing my first legendary. I decide to go with Jolteon to start this battle, in spite of what happened last time, because I still think that it's the best course of action to paralyze it before chipping away at its health. And we do so with Thunderbolt and a couple double kicks. But then something bizarre happens. As I threw Pokeballs at it, I would keep getting a prompt that says, "You missed the Pokemon." Like, why? It's a giant flaming bird. How can I keep missing a target like that? But no matter whether it was a Pokeball, Great Ball, or Ultra Ball, I just kept missing. At this point, I was left with only one option to capture it, and that was throwing my Master Ball. But I've never had this happen before, and I didn't really want to risk throwing a Master Ball in case I miss with that too and waste it. I'm not too sure what this mechanic is, or if it even affects the Master Ball, but I wasn't willing to find out. So I decided to let Jolteon give in to its carnal desire and do what it wanted to do from the start. And with that, the Pokemon League stands in front of us. The team consists of Blastoise, Fearow, Graveler, Jolteon, Slowbro, and Kabutops. We've had an amazing journey together, and it culminates here, where we'll face the strongest trainers in Kanto for the title of Pokemon League Champion. We enter the first room and are met by Lorelei. She starts out with Dewgong, who is feinted by a critical hit Thunderbolt from Jolteon. Another critical hit Thunderbolt KOs Cloyster, and Jolteon goes for the 3-peat and critical hit Thunderbolts her Slowbro as well. I now feel a lot less worse about Jolteon fainting 2 legendary Pokemon because it seems to have gotten it motivated for our toughest challenge yet. Jinx is up next and puts an end to Jolteon's one-hit KOs by taking a Thunderbolt really well. It goes for Body Slam, which paralyzes Jolteon, and gets some damage off with Thrash before getting dropped by another critical hit Thunderbolt. Last up for Lorelei is Lapras, who outspeeds thanks to the paralysis and puts an end to Jolteon's beatdown with a Hydro Pump. But Jolteon did more than enough to put us in winning position and was the real MVP here. I send in Fearow, who gets a Drill Peck in before getting one-shotted by Blizzard. I kinda forgot that Lorelei is an Ice-type trainer because of all the Water-type Pokemon she has, so Fearow probably wasn't the right call. I then go with Blastoise, who goes for Skull Bash, which does not do much, so I resort to using Tail Whips to drop Lapras' defense in preparation for my next Pokemon. A noble sacrifice that seemed necessary given Lapras' bulk. And it worked like a charm, because when Kabutops came in, he was able to use both Body Slam and Slash to feint Lapras and secure us our first Elite Four win. We are definitely underleveled and took a little bit of a beating in that first round, but I'm still feeling good about the team. And once everybody is healed up, we make our way to the second member, Bruno. I thought he was a fighting type trainer, so I open with Firo, who is met with his Onyx. I quickly get Firo out of that position and swap in Slowbro. Luckily, Bruno went for an X-Defend, so I got that swap in with no damage. He then curiously goes for another X-Defend, and Slowbro takes advantage and Bubble Beams Onyx for a knockout. Next comes in Hitmonchan, the fighting type Pokemon I was expecting from the get-go, so Firo returns to land a Drill Peck, dodge a counter, and land a second Drill Peck to finish it off. I keep Firo in to one-shot Hitmonlee with Fly, and then swap in Slowbro to once again knock out an Onyx with a Bubble Beam. Ring Around the Rosie continues as Firo comes back in for Bruno's Machamp, and begins by lowering its defense with Leer, which Bruno must have thought was a really good play because Machamp did the exact same thing. Firo then takes to the air, making Machamp miss a submission, and lands a super effective hit, almost knocking it out, but putting it in low enough health to be knocked out next turn by a Drill Peck. This battle was much easier than the first thanks to the tag team duo of Slowbro and Firo, but the next matchup doesn't seem as favorable for us. The third member of the Elite Four is Agatha, and her Gengar puts Firo to sleep on turn 1. She then swaps for Golbat, who confuses Firo with Confuse Ray. Unfortunately for them, they didn't know that Firo never forgot its roots, and always is keen on going all out against bat Pokemon. Terrified at the forces they may have unleashed, Agatha swaps back into Gengar, who takes a Drill Peck. Firo uses Fly, but then gets put back to sleep by Hypnosis, followed by a Confuse Ray. I use a full heal to wake up Firo and go for a Drill Peck, but it hits itself in confusion. Firo gets through the confusion to hit Gengar, but it lives with a bit of HP left. Gengar then goes for another Confuse Ray, which fails, and immediately Firo breaks out of confusion and lands a Drill Peck to finish Gengar off. Golbat musters up the courage to return, but it's all in vain as Firo does what it has always been determined to do, and feints the bat Pokemon with a single hit. I swap in Graveler to battle her Haunter, and it hits with a Confuse Ray, but Graveler's unfazed and one-shots with Earthquake. Next in is Arbok, but it never gets a chance to make a difference because it also gets one-shotted by Earthquake. Last up for Agatha is another Gengar, but it fares no better as Graveler lands another super effective Earthquake to finish up the match. The final member of the Elite Four is Lance, and I'm a bit worried about him. Because not only does he have much higher leveled Pokemon than me, but he also has Dragon types, and I have not faced a Dragon type Pokemon yet, so I don't really know what to expect from my team. However, I did take a precaution and teach Slowbro Ice Beam, which I hope will give us the advantage. Lance opens up the fight with Gyarados, so I decide to set up an Amnesia to boost my special stat. I then go for Psychic and get a special drop on Gyarados, which works great because I can then feint it with another Psychic next turn. Next out is the first Dragon Pokemon we've faced yet, which provides the perfect opportunity to see how effective Ice Beam can be. And I'm not disappointed because it one-shots. I decide to play it safe and restore Slowbro's health because I think it'll be pivotal in winning this fight. Dragonair goes for a Dragon Rage, but can't compete with Ice Beam. Next out is Aerodactyl, which is double weak to Ice Beam with its flying and rock typing, so I keep Slowbro in, but tragedy strikes and it hits with a critical hit takedown, so I switch into Blastoise, who takes another takedown and dishes out a strong Surf, which drops Aerodactyl. Last up is Dragonite, who I don't really want to take any chances with, so I plan to hit it with as many tail whips as it will allow me to set up my physical hitters in the back. But Dragonite drops Blastoise with a Hyper Beam. I then go with Jolteon to land a Thunder Wave, but then to my confusion, Dragonite lands another Hyper Beam and a critical hits. I thought I had a free turn, but at the very least Jolteon landed its Thunder Wave, so we do got that going for us. But I was not ready for Hyper Beam spam. And spam it did, as I tried to go for Mirror Move with Firo, but turns out that Mirror Move actually doesn't work like this, and the Pokemon using it has to have been attacked by the move before it mirrors it. Wish I would have found that out a little bit earlier. Of course, Firo gets dropped, so I go with Kabutops, and Body Slam does virtually nothing. I then have to rely on critical hits from Slash, which I'm able to get a few off, and then randomly Dragonite takes a turn to recharge. Like, yeah, I'm sure it does, it just fired off 3 Hyper Beams in a row. I finally get a Paralysis, the first since Jolteon landed the Thunder Wave, and Kabutops finishes off Dragonite with a Slash. The Elite Four have been defeated. but Lance informs me that the challenge isn't over yet. For someone has defeated the Elite Four before I had, and now they sit as the Pokemon League champion, and I must defeat them to earn the title. As I walk into the final room, I'm met with an all-too-familiar face. My rival, Gary. He tells me that through his journey, he has been completing his Pokedex and training the toughest Pokemon to be able to take on anyone. He now believes he is the strongest trainer in the whole world. And I can't help but be amazed at what he's accomplished in such a short time. It wasn't too long ago that he was just another brain-rotted iPad kid, but now he's grown up to be one of the strongest trainers in Kanto, and is even helping his granddad fulfill his Pokedex dream. Truly, it's been an honor having been his rival. But now it's time to face the ultimate test. Gary begins this championship battle with Pidgeot, but it's little match for Jolteon, only able to land a mirror move Thunderbolt while Jolteon feints it with 2 super effective hits. Gary's second Pokemon is Alakazam, who gave me some trouble last time around. Jolteon opens with its newly learned Pin Missile, but the damage is immediately recovered by Alakazam. Jolteon then goes for Thunder Wave and Sand Attack, which creates an opening to go for a Pin Missile, which almost takes it out by hitting 4 times and 1 for a critical hit. Alakazam gets paralyzed, but then Jolteon misses a Pin Missile. Luckily, Alakazam went for Reflect, and one last Pin Missile finishes it off. With Rhydon coming in, I swap for Slowbro. Rhydon lowers Slowbro's defense, but a single Bubble Beam is all it takes to feint it. So far, so good. Gary then goes with Gyarados, so I swap back into Jolteon and one-shot it for the knockout. Next up is Arcanine against Blastoise. Arcanine opens the exchange with Takedown, and Blastoise answers with Surf. Arcanine goes for Roar, and Blastoise feints it with another Surf. Last but not least is Gary's starter Pokemon, who he began his journey with, Venusaur. I swap in Fearow to one-shot this grassy beast one last time, but clearly Venusaur's been working on its defense because Drill Run doesn't even drop it to half health. It then starts storing up energy for a Solar Beam, and Fearow is able to get it down to just a sliver of health before Gary uses a full restore. Fearow gets right back to it and starts chipping away at Venusaur's health with Drill Peck, but it gets blasted by a Solar Beam, which leaves it in a serious predicament. It's able to get Venusaur down to just a couple hit points, but it can't finish off the job due to a critical hitting Razor Leaf. A strong final push from my rival who won't give up. But it's time to end this with the Pokemon who stands alone at the summit of my rocky heart. I send Slowbro in to bring us home, and it does just that, with a single Psychic Attack, to win us the battle and crown us the Pokemon League champion of the Kanto region. Professor Oak stops in to congratulate Gary on becoming the new champ, only to find that he's already been defeated. So he leaves his grandson with some wise words, and reminds me that this victory isn't my own, but due to the Pokemon who were by my side and the bonds that we formed on our adventure. We walk over to the Hall of Fame and make this thing official. Back at home, reminiscing on our great adventures together, it dawns on me. There's still one last thing to do in this region after becoming champion. And honestly, it wouldn't sit right with me if we ended the journey here before going after that final Pokemon. It kind of feels like unfinished business, you know? So the team and I fly over to Cerulean City, where we heard rumor of a strong Pokemon nearby. And after a little bit of searching, we finally found who we were looking for. Zapdos. It was accepted long ago that this region just isn't big enough for my yellow dog and 3 legendary birds, and I know Jolteon wants to finish the sweep. There is a moment in the heat of battle where I think maybe this is my time to finally catch a legendary, but I don't want to take this away from my friend. Sometimes it's better to step back and help those around us reach their goals. And with Jolteon finally satiated, our adventure has come to a close. And like with the end of any great journey, we travel back home for a good rest.